There we go. It's recording.
Okay, welcome to the second episode of Exploring the Digital Economy. Each Friday, as you all know, we chat about emerging technologies and their impact on our lives and communities, our businesses, professions, and institutions. I'm Perry Kincaid, your host. Before proceeding, please mute your audio and use chat to send me any comments or questions you may have for me or any of our guests. Our theme today is the digital economy, that is, the impact of data gathered everywhere, analyzed by man and machine, and used to modify behavior. No person or family, no job or profession, no business or industry, no town or community can escape it. The new status quo is perpetual change, continuous learning, adapt or, well, that's enough. Let's get our guest's perspective. This is our first guest, Sharon McLean. Welcome, Sharon. Are you unmuted?
Hello.
You are. You're looking great. Okay, Sharon, you're a founder and the CEO of Worldgate Media, advising companies on how to maximize the benefits of social media. Throughout your career, as I've known it, because I've known you for a few years, and I won't tell the audience how long,
Yeah, I know.
in communications and marketing in both the public and private sectors, you've always demonstrated foresight. Today, the world is being shaken by COVID. Tell us the impact on online conferencing. You have 12 minutes. Viewers, please use chat to pose any questions or comments you may have for Sharon. It's all yours, Sharon.
Claire, I'm counting on you to put up the screen share.
Think you can do that, Claire? Can you ad-lib along the way, Sharon, just looking at your own PowerPoints and do ad-libbing, and then we can add them in later? There we go, I think. I'm vamping right now. If I have a good joke, that's what I should be doing as fillers. Anything on the screen look familiar yet?
There it is.
There
Way
we
to go. Woo! We did that.
Touch the full.
Way to go, Claire.
Touch the full screen, Claire.
Okay, so Claire, are you going to advance that for me?
You want to advance it now?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. There we go. Oh, okay. So anyway, thanks very much, Perry, for that introduction. And hello and welcome to everybody from virtual land here to this event. We're going to be talking about virtual conferencing. And we don't need to say again or repeat again about the massive shift, but we are going to talk about the massive shift to virtual conferencing from live discussions, live events, and some of the virtual gaffes that we've had to, we're all learning at the same time. And there are some problems that have emerged with this transition. We're talking about voice training, audio training, better online conversations, and how do we do that? And of course, do messaging events change at all from online to digital? And do these virtual events, summits and conferences and meetings, do they align with our new business goals? And of course, how do we scale up when it comes time to achieving results online, whether it's sales or whether it's increased engagements for your respective businesses, but how do we scale that up? And then of course, there are some solutions that we have come with that we will address through as we go through. Next slide, Claire. Yeah, there are more than 50 ways to disappoint your virtual audience, and we've been counting them up. I'm sure you've got your own fair share of challenges that you've seen. Thank you, Claire. Next slide. So there's some of the problems that we see here. These are three of them that we've identified for you today, but the first one will talk about the fact that marketing departments invest 25% of their budgets typically into receptions, meetings, board of directors meetings, large conferences, large summits. There's not a small budget assigned to all of our live event experiences. And then secondly, the problem is how do we address these conversations online? Folks are typically very uncomfortable speaking to screens today. They don't like their voices. They don't like how they look. There can be all kinds of challenges when it comes time to going from live events to on-screen events. So we've identified that. And then third problem, just for this case for today, we know that over 60% of companies involved in conference marketing are not so happy with what they've seen this year. Sponsors aren't particularly pleased with their ROI when it comes to events. They got kind of flat-footed this year, and they were perhaps investing as sponsors for live events. And they had no choice but to go to a virtual event when their event manager told them they had no choice. Were they happy? Were the attendees happy? Were the event organizers satisfied? Problem. Next slide. Thanks, Claire. Going the opposite direction. Yeah, so who needs our help? Speakers, attendees, sponsors, and event organizers. Everybody is in this transition that is going to be needing support. Next slide. Thanks, Claire. So a virtual event gaffes. Here's just a sampling that we have seen. Uncomfortable sounds. We've all heard them. Awkward conversations and the dreaded silence in reply to questions. You know, broadcast interviewers in traditional times, their dreaded reply is somebody who doesn't really speak up and there's silence at the other end. They could not stand that. And so we have to really understand how that moves from stage to screen. How do we deal with those transitions? And of course, poor scheduling of conference agendas. Last month, I covered an event for Reuters News marketing organization that had 40 speakers, global brand speakers, and it was intense over 2 days, but there was not a single break between any of those sessions. And so people like me covering the event, we got caught up in that. People needed a break. They couldn't get up and go away for a coffee break, let alone networking opportunities, which brought us to dissatisfied sponsors. How do they get to be in touch with their the people that they want to do business with or nurture relationships? And finally, is this all wasted investment of resources? If conference events are charging $500, $750 at $1,000 per attendee, are we getting our value for that? Next slide, Claire. So there are 3 common mistakes, and again, there's so many more for us to talk about, but here's one: not vetting the tech platform well enough. So how do we avoid disaster? We need to run through rehearsals before any event goes online, and we have to have our technical people there walking alongside us. The second common mistake is a single speaker, not testing for every single speaker that is coming on to the session. And this is adding so much time to these events that the technical people really do need to help that individual get online properly. And then finally, using webinar software for conferences. We've all been in webinars for many, many years now. The webinar platforms are not the same platform that we're using and have to depend on for our digital conferences, summits, and conventions. There are unique conference platforms that are emerging today that deal not only with legacy video, but also digital management of conferences. Next slide. Thank you, Claire. So solutions, any ideas for solutions? Yes, we have come up with concepts with our team for virtual conference mastery that we have brought our collective wisdom experience together to talk about how it is that we can help people transition better. So next slide, Claire. How do you win? How do our people win? We've come up with a free prerequisite. We're going to be offering a blooper reel for people to understand what the history of is as we have ramped up to virtual conferencing permanently, practically. And then we have created an e-course with SHRM approved certification, SHRM standing for the Society of Human Resources Management. So they approve the conference material that we will be delivering to people, and people can walk away after going through that course with the 59-page ebook that we have created. And finally, we are getting regular questions about how do you make sales online? How do you progress to the next step to actually achieve success, either through financially and or through engaging relationships. And so we have got a method, a process that's been developed by Olivier Topin from LinkedIn, who has 1.8 million followers for the last 15 years. He's a social media pioneer. So that is what we're coming up with, a solution to offer. And the next 3 slides will just take you quickly through some of that again. Thank you, Claire. One more. So the free prerequisite will be a state of the industry virtual sort of explanation of how we got to this. That'll be free. Next slide will be an integrative e-course that I just covered, again, with these elements that people are asking us for. Next one, Claire. And then, of course, the partner share. So we're not wanting to do this independently. We want to be able to work with collaborators who say, you know, if we work with you, how does everybody, we all need new business plans today. And we're offering a business plan which looks like a partner share if we are able to engage with the entire population who needs to be educated in this new world. And then fourthly, thanks, Claire, moving on. So again, the scale up concept that we've been talking about for lead generation sales, we have got a 3-stage strategy that talks about a speaker series that we can show you how to do, and that leads into a hot series that talks about how to sell products and how to engage with sponsors, and then finally, sponsored selling designed to generate leads. So we want to help conferences and businesses leverage their customers and clients and prospects into having a business plan online. So I'm going to stop there, Perry. This is an introduction to a business offering that we have developed, and again with our virtual conference mastery team. It is commercial in nature, so thank you very much for that time, but it is a needed step today. So
well, that's awesome, Sharon. I mean, it's so impressive. One, it was tight. You gave us a lot of information in a tight period of time, which is very, very rare. Most just go on and on and on. I did have a question though. When you were talking about how mature conference sponsoring has become, conferencing has become, that you can get a lot of features. Was that your point on how things have advanced, that there are so many more features now for digital broadcasting?
sponsors are you talking about?
No, you had a slide where you talked about there being so much now available than that wasn't available in the past.
Yeah, but I mean that the whole method of presenting to, nurturing relationships on, and perhaps closing deals using the screen presence versus a live presence has really evolved and changed. And we think that there are a lot of people who are still needing education on how this can be achieved. What is the process? They're jumping in blind because we didn't have enough time to transition properly.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we were being told years ago that this was on its way, and if you weren't ready tomorrow, you'll be dead in the water. And then nothing happened until COVID hit, and all of a sudden online was everything. I mean, everything's virtual now. Any questions out there, gentlemen? Because I've got lots.
This is Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Hello. Sharon and Perry, just on that same note of, I liked how you said, Sharon, back in the old days when radio broadcasters had their training, it is kind of a significant point to make to people that if you're presenting online, if you're presenting in a digital format like this, there are known skills. Broadcasters, for example, would have had that to interview over a technology back in the old days with radio or on television. Now we're all doing it as amateurs on the screen, and it's super important. And I just was wondering, Sharon, what your comments were. It sounds like you're doing some of that training. What are kind of the main things that people struggle with? You had mentioned, you know, they don't like how they look.
First I want to say that the key person on our team who is a trained performance certified professor is Tom Bradshaw. He's comes from theater. He taught a high level college related courses, and he has studied online screen communications. But very often the the challenges that we've seen are that people are so uncomfortable talking about being present visually on a screen. And the other thing that Tom talks about is rate of speech. So I probably talk too fast for a rate of speech for this event, or maybe on the faster side. But he talks about a rate of speech that is too slow, and then just right, and then speeding up when we want to create intensity. So he will train people to for their voices for the delivery. That would be one example, Jackie.
Yeah, it's the difference between being an amateur and just trying to learn as you go versus getting some proper training. I completely agree. And if anyone wants to have that presence, like you say, it's an acting skill, it's a performance skill, and it's really important to pull that to the forefront. If we're going to be online from now until forever, it's worth it getting those skills and getting the training now, and rather than trying to learn as you go.
I'm glad you used the word performance, Jackie, because that's exactly how we are referring to it is virtual performance. And that again, the skills that we had as live presenters to an audience, we got immediate feedback from people in the room. Here on a screen, it's very difficult to have, you can't have more than one person speaking at a time because you can't be talking over each other. It doesn't work that way on screen. So there are all of those tools and skills to learn.
Absolutely. And I imagine, especially as the comment came up about sales, you can't read body language. Well, you can. The body language and everything is different to be read online through the digital compared to how you normally interact. And so again, just all sorts of nuance. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Good for you guys.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah. Do you come, Jackie, by the way, do you come from the broadcast world?
No, I'm a facilitator. And I've been online for a long time. So it's just worth pointing out to people in all contexts now. And my preference, of course, is in the classroom in person. And I don't mind being online, just like you said, but you know, it's different. It is very, very different. And that's what people are learning the hard way now.
By the way, I want to compliment you on your setting behind you, your screen setting behind you, and your lighting. So
yeah,
thank you.
Thank
Say,
you.
Tom, you're unmuted. Does that mean you have a question?
Yeah. Yeah, I am from the broadcast field and did a lot of interviewing over the years for radio and for TV. And I can remember going to a workshop once, which was back in the days when Alberta Learning was interested in doing more in the area of creating what they called learning objects. And anyway, I can remember they had set up a connecting facility for the teachers to talk within the city and everything like that. And they kept bringing in the most boring teachers you could ever imagine. And I just think that it's so essential that you screen who's going on camera, because really that will make or break you. And so it's almost like doing like we have done in the business for years, is to do an audition, and the audition will help you survive in this new wave of communication. Anyway.
That's so important, Todd. Thank you very much for bringing that up as well, because what we will do through virtual conference mastery, of course, is help speakers with their video presentations to event managers so that they show themselves and present themselves in the best possible light when they're auditioning.
Yeah. And it takes practice, you know, like, again, you're not going to get perfection right from the start with some people who haven't had the experience, and it takes a bit of time to get them up to speed, you know. Perry is just a natural, you don't have to train him.
Yeah, sure. Sharon, I want to bring to your attention that the striped man on the right, that's Tom, we've let him out for the day and he'll be free to speak. But don't forget, Tom, that at 6 o'clock you have to return. I also wanted to point out that my alligator shirt appears to come across very interesting. That was not intentional, but does it come across looking like alligator skin when I move around?
No, an old pajamas section.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, say Seal, you got a question regarding lighting and camera angle. Do you want to ask it directly, or shall I just pass it on? Go ahead.
Well, Perry, hi, Sharon. How are you?
Hi, good, good.
Good. Well, good to meet you
Joe, there
again.
you are. Hi,
Yeah,
Seal.
see you again.
Nice
And,
to see you again, Seal. Yeah, thank you.
See you. It's now with, I mean, I'm with RBC Dominion Securities. With the RBC family, we don't use Zoom internally, so we're mostly on Cisco WebEx. And
Yeah.
the thing I'm finding is lighting. Sometimes lighting is an issue. And also I'm finding with camera angles, because typically when you talk to a person, you typically look them in the eye. You don't look up to them, or you don't look down at them. And so I find that we've been advised to level our eye with the camera of the laptop, right? So I'm not too sure. Do you find with groups that becomes an issue, the lighting and the camera angle?
Absolutely. I would say the top issue is sound. So we don't have sound. I think we can deal sometimes with lighting, shades of lighting, but if we don't have sound, that seems to affect us really, really poorly. So sound is an issue. So microphones become, proper miking becomes really important, but absolutely lighting and sound for sure, Seal, yeah.
Sounds good, thank you.
Say, Joe, you've got a question?
I do. Hi, Sharon, it's Joe. I'm listening to your messaging, and when there's a very sensitive, not sensitive, very technical topic to be delivered, and the technician isn't very good at it, potentially maybe me, and you want to get an actor in there. How do you create the credibility of an actor who knows? Who follows a script versus someone who knows the technical stuff upside down and backwards?
So I think in that case, so you're talking about being invited to speak or to address an audience, and if that was the case, then I would make sure in advance who's doing the technology and how much they know or what they know, and then really check that out so that you don't get hung up. So thank goodness we had Claire today, you know, he was helping us. He helped us in advance of the event and the end of the show. And the other thing that I find that happens is when an event is called for 6 o'clock p.m., people automatically come on at 6 o'clock p.m. But I do believe that the speaker should be invited well in advance of that 6 p.m. call sheet to make sure that their technology works properly, lighting and sound again are effective. So yeah, is that what you were asking, Joe?
Go ahead, Jackie.
If I may add another observation as well, Joseph, if you want to be giving those technical answers, then get a really good person who's able to perform as the interviewer. Right, so the interviewer, you get your script set up so that you ask the question in the exact right way so that you can provide your technical answer. And so the interviewer takes on the role of the performance, and you can maintain your role of technical expertise. And you're not entertaining to the others, you're informing, whereas that interviewer, you know, you get your banter back and forth, your sidekick kind of jocularity, and then that can add to your engagement and keeping people up, because also lots of times with technical people, they'll want to answer very long technical details and then the audience can't follow. So that interviewer can summarize and paraphrase and reposition the questions for them, especially if they're nervous and that sort of thing. You just need that person who's confident and competent to help guide the conversation.
Well, this is a good moment to make a transition because Joe's asked a question that could very much relate to him and his presentation that's up next. So thank you, Sharon, very much. Stick around. There may be a continuing discussion as we start drinking later on in the show around 5:30, 5:15.
No, see this here? See this? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I've got mine.
My flagon is here, so.
That's why we used to call it a seance, is we're all sipping spirits. So Joe, you're on. Joe, you're the CEO of ProVenture Pathway, pioneering the application of accounting principles in the valuation of a company's assets. What makes you unique, as I've seen over the years, is the attention paid to intangible assets. That is intellectual property, patents, even market share. Given the emergence of the digital economy and the relevance of valuations for attracting capital, your work, in my mind, is groundbreaking. Joe, you got 12 minutes. Viewers, again, please use chat to pose any questions or comments you may have for Joe, but I'll spot you when you go unmuted and call on you. Joe, you're on.
Okay. It says my host is host participant. Okay. They've disabled my screen sharing. Can you enable my screen sharing, please, Claire? Okay, here we go. That's it there.
There we go.
Okay, there you go. Oh, look at that.
Very
Ooh,
good.
this is fantastic. Okay,
No
so this is a little different. Everybody's a lot of people will go around the mulberry bush with this a lot, and so I've taken a slightly different approach. But before I do that, I want to just bring out. Can I go to screen 2? Yeah, there we go. I'm a member of a think tank that's a community of practice around in a number of places. We're headquartered largely in London, England, and we have participants in Edmonton, and I'm in British Columbia and the U.S. We've also got participants from Germany and France, probably Spain, I should say. And we're trying. What we're trying to do is we need to upgrade financial reporting to the 2020 realities. And unfortunately, the dominance of intangible assets has meant that this has become a really difficult issue. So we want to be able to record what the missing assets are. Record the value, and then interestingly, we're into now in making questions about whether or not climate change and carbon emissions actually are liabilities for corporations and whatnot. And then we're going to have to go through a massive amount of retraining. But in large part, the applicability of what we're talking about here, in particular with the work that Perry is doing, is that this work is going to allow companies and provinces and federal governments whatnot to learn about and adapt corporate lending to SMEs. That's incredibly important to companies and our economy coming out of the pandemic. And what that means, of course, I hope you know what SMEs are, but in large part, the almost every analyst, every economist and whatnot says that the future of our economies are going to be making sure that small, medium entities are healthy and they have access to capital in order to continue their work and grow and employ people. Okay, coming out of the COVID, I'm anticipating, frankly, that the numbers of SMEs, and there's millions of them across the world, the numbers of SMEs are going to shrink dramatically. Okay. So the question about value is an interesting one. I always go to the very basics. Okay, the most common way, and there's been a formula around forever that talks about how do you value a company, or frankly, how do you value an individual? You list your assets, you subtract your debts and liabilities, and you come up with value, or what you're worth. Now this sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. So what I've done a number of times is say, okay, let's start with some of the very, very basic things. So let's look at an individual situation. So an individual's value is what we call your net worth. So if for purposes of doing estate planning, or if you want to go and go to a bank or something like that to get a loan, or unfortunately, if you're in a divorce situation, you have to show what your worth is and whatnot. You come up with this little formula called net worth. Okay, so that is a common definition of what people are worth or whatever. And so on the left-hand side, you can see a bunch of green numbers. So you put your bank account, your value of your house, your cars, and if you have a cabin and whatnot. So this particular fictitious individual has a gross number of value of their assets of 990,000, and then on the right hand side you can see in red the loans and mortgages they have. So this individual, fictitious as they are, would have a net worth of $605,000. So then I go over and say, okay, now do you know how a company is valued? And the term commonly used is net book value. So likewise, look, a company will be asked or their financial statements will show all these numbers in green, your bank account, your receivables, your inventory, securities, your prepaids, buildings and whatnot. And I've added in there the bottom number, goodwill, and I put it in black because that is an intangible that a lot of people understand and others don't. But in this company, in this case, this fictitious company has a total asset value of $5,050,000, and then on the right hand side you can see a bunch of red numbers, and those are the debts and obligations. Most of them are related specifically to the asset. Okay, so the receivables has a line of credit against it, inventory has a line of credit, vehicles have vendor financing, and buildings and manufacturing have notes and whatnot. So that total is 2.65 million. So the net book value of this company is 2.4 million. This is a fictitious company. So if I then take the most important piece of these two, I'm going to go back to this one, are the numbers in green, because those numbers in green are those are all your pluses. Okay, so if I put the two together, can you see the numbers on the right with I've got the faces of all the people on the right hand side. Can you?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so if you look at the two lists here, the real interesting thing about it is when an individual is asked what their net worth is and what their assets are, we put these numbers on there, and we put these numbers on there at probably what they're assessed at or what they're really worth. Okay, when a company is asked to do that, the company's numbers are placed on here at original cost. Now, why does that matter? Well, a good example is if you did the same thing to people. If you look at the second one, the house. If an individual and their spouse bought that house 10 or 15 years ago for $300,000, and now it's worth $600,000, you put $600,000 on your net worth statement. If a company bought that for their president or the CEO, 10 or 15 years ago, the number would be what they paid for it, $300,000, and they would actually depreciate it over time. It might be appreciated down to $150,000, and so you can see that there's a pretty major difference between what the worth of an individual might be and what the accounting statements show the worth of a company might look like. Okay. One of the examples that I use as well, my wife lauds over me every once in a while because we've got 3 children, and a number of years ago she decided that she wanted to buy some gold for these children, and so she went out and bought an ounce of gold for each of the children, and she paid $600 an ounce, and now it's worth $1,800 an ounce. And so if we were listing our worth on our statement on the left hand side, it would be, whatever the number is, 1,800 times 3 is $5,400. And if it was a company, it would still be sitting on the books at $1,800. So why is this important? Well, if you're trying to figure out what your net worth is, as an example, if I'm going to just add another line to your net worth here. And what I've done is I've said, okay, if your net worth, if you own half of this business that I've just described, this fictitious business I've described, so I've added this extra line here of 50% of the business value. If the business value, if we just take this business value, assuming the net book value as I shown here, then your net worth would be increased by 1.2 million. You can see that, okay? But immediately people will say, well, hold it now. That calculation of what you think the net book value is doesn't include, that's not what our company is worth. We think our company is worth $10 million. Well, if you do another calculation and say, okay, let's put the $10 million in there, you own 50% of it, it dramatically changes your net worth. Now, why is this important? Well, if in fact there's going to be some formulas or some programs coming out of the other side of this pandemic, and the pandemic has just accelerated the issue. If we're going to come outside of this, and we're going to rely on small medium entities and small medium businesses to reemploy people and expand the employment base, because frankly the economy is totally dependent on people working. How is it possible to place some kind of program into and lend or invest money in small businesses when their valuation is completely off the charts? That's what I'm trying to, because if you look at what you think you might be worth as an individual, we list your assets and we list them at fair market value today. When we do this for companies, it's historical cost or even worse. And then we don't, you notice that, you remember way back, I said that I put this $100,000 in as goodwill. Well, that's just a really minor piece of what companies are worth. Okay. Now, here's a graph that we created a number of years ago, and we keep repeating it over and over and over. What's happened in our economy, as Perry talks about the digital economy, which is really the information age. If you look way back into this graph, the red bars are on a declining basis. Essentially, we've moved away from the industrial economy to this digital economy, and unfortunately, the world has never recognized that the digital economy has assets like brand and logos and customer relationships and all those other kind of things. And so basically they're missing over and over in the value of these various companies. So one of the things that I talk about as an example is, a company that has a brand like Kleenex or Hewlett Packard, or you remember the days when we had offices and you either had sometimes we had a secretary, and you walked down the street and said, would you do some Xeroxing for me? Okay. You didn't say you did go doing copying or the like, or if you're out, and if you're going to go out in the back 40 and on a nice sunny day in the wintertime, you're going skidooing. You don't go snowmobiling and whatnot. Those brands have got such an influence on people's lives and purchasing power, yet those brands are not recognized in terms of value or in terms of what you're worth officially. Okay, so what we're showing in this graph here is that the gap between what is actually recognized, that's the top line is right there. That's what a company is worth, and the gap between there and there is basically a multiple intangibles like that I've described. One of the questions I ask all the time is, what do you think the Nike swoosh is worth? We all know what the Nike swoosh is, right? I watch sports all the time, but if every sports every sports team in our society has Nike. These fellows have Nike clothes on. Okay, what do you think that swoosh is worth? Or as one of the we've been doing some work on Bayer. You know who Bayer? Those are the people that make the aspirin. What do you think the Bayer cross is worth as a logo? Or people think that Coca-Cola is a brand. Well, Coca-Cola is a brand, but it's also a logo, okay? Because the way they do it. So what this shows is that the value, the net book value that accountants are recording has been massively diminishing. Okay, so those are some of the hurdles that we are constantly encountering when we're asked the question is, okay, if we're going to try to help the economy, we're going to try to recover from these situations, what are the things that we were going to have to overcome? Okay. And I'm going to get one more here, Perry. One of the things that we show every once in a while, which is really quite intriguing, if you look at the largest companies that our society had back in 1996, okay, and you look at the list: General Electric, Royal Dutch Shell, Coca-Cola, and Nippon and whatnot. And look at the companies that are the largest companies today. These companies back in 1996 aren't even don't even make the top 10 anymore, okay? And what's the difference? Because these are the companies that are full of intangible assets, that like customer relationships, and these companies go out and they're constantly buying up other little companies that have relational capital and whatnot. So the challenges that we are trying to help people that are trying to create a program, these are the challenges that we face. Is that unfortunately, I can say this because I am a CA, I'm a CPA myself. The challenges are that we've got an accounting profession that is miles behind the times, and they should be the ones that are starting this process and discussion. So that's where we are. So anyway, in order, if you're going to try to figure out how you're going to value your business, these are some of the things you have to overcome. Okay, that's the end of it.
Okay, well, thank you, Joe. Gee, I've got a bushel basket of questions, but if anybody wants to jump the queue and go first, okay, I'm on a roll then. Joe, you made reference here to the creative economy. Can you give me a little bit of color? I understand, sure, the primary assets that we see in the future are intangible. Where's the word creativity come in here? I'm not quite sure I see that.
Well, sure, that's a wonderful question, Perry. One of our two of our people that are in our group have created what we call it a taxonomy. We have listed 64 different classes of intangible assets, and clearly a number of them are in the creative business, the creative part of it. So I've only listed, I only talk about the ones that people would really relate to, like brand and logo and customer relationship. But a massive piece of that is product and the product that are in progress. Yeah. So
I mean, I find that absolutely fascinating, because if there's anything disruptive to an institutional mindset or to status quo and rigidity, it's creativity. I mean, that word in itself, for those that work in an organization that administers its operation rather than manages, does not want creativity. They don't want innovation. They want status quo, and they want adherence to administrative principles. That's the very definition of an institution.
Yeah.
So you're asking that we develop an economy and the accounting that goes along with it to fit in a change-minded economy, not one that's based on maintaining status quo. That's quite exciting.
Well, and clearly almost all of our norms for lending and for accounting and a lot of legal and whatnot is based on the industrial economy that served us beautifully, okay, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. But as you can see, in the age of disruption here, now look at the top five: Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon. Or Amazon is number one now, by the way, I think so. But yeah, so this massive disruption has happened, okay, and yet banks and you name it, pension funds and whatnot, they don't even recognize that this is actually physically gone on. Yeah.
Is the market recognizing? I mean, you just said Apple. If an accountant does a net value of Apple based on historical principles, they're going to get a value very different than what the market is.
Well, absolutely. And the fear that I have, frankly, Perry, is that if a company that, the management and the board of directors of a company has a fiduciary responsibility to protect the assets and grow the company. It's really, really hard to protect an asset you don't know exists, or even if you do know exists, if you don't understand the characteristics, or if you don't understand the risk analysis faced with that. mean, a good example is General Mills would have never thought for one moment that they were going to have a boycott of their products because of this racism issue that's been going on in the last little while. And so if you sort of generally knew those kind of things, wouldn't you have maybe you might have taken some different action before the event and before you had people boycotting you and whatnot? So our position is that we want to fill that gap. Okay, the gap between the, okay, I'm going to go back to this. You can see this again. The gap between the 16%, we want to fill that gap with the specifics, okay, and then say, here's what it is, here's what the relative values are, but here's the way you should be managing that. And here, if risks are coming out in society, whether they be economic collapse or climate related or social media related and whatnot, if these risks are coming at you, what kind of corrective action are you going to take to protect these assets? And, you know, a good example these days is Facebook is under massive pressure right now because they've been idiots. Okay, sorry to say that, but they've been idiots. Okay, and so they're now, not only are they getting a backlash from their customer base, there's 48 states in the United States have actually joined in on a lawsuit against Facebook, and it looks like Facebook is going to have to break up. Because now if they had known what they had and they managed it properly, they could have probably avoided that. Okay. Now I don't know what that means. We don't know what that's going to mean per se. But again, if you don't understand what your assets are, how can you protect them properly?
So besides government, I mean, government's the one that seems to be taking some lead in Europe and in North America to address the Facebook issue. But there are others that care about value, not just markets. They're called banks. I mean, are the banks aware that the asset value of the companies that they're lending money to is severely understated or maybe overstated? Where do the banks stand in all of this? Maybe Seal wants to jump in here as well, but go ahead, either one of you.
Well, maybe just a couple of points. So Perry, on in terms of offering credit or lending to companies, it's been a real metamorphosis and evolution of very traditional bricks and mortar type of valuation. And Perry, you and I met when I was involved with KBI, with knowledge-based industries.
Right.
And it's a struggle. It continues to be a struggle to look at cash flow lending versus pure bricks and mortar type lending, right? And however, though, it's just in general, the banks have come a long way in recognizing more of a cash flow type of scenario. The other thing also is, a lot of the ESG issues with environmental, social, governance issues. So we're starting to see a lot of the previously intangible issues now coming right into the forefront of addressing valuation in companies beyond just bricks and mortar. So I'm encouraged by that. And it's really, though, an evolution. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done. But I like the way even consumers are driving that new behavior. So I'm optimistic.
Well,
Perry, can I add one more thing? Seal's absolutely right. Unfortunately, the way they're applying Seal, in our experience, the way they're applying what you're describing is largely for large entities. The SMEs don't qualify at all. So one of the things we're talking about anyway, to people that are listening, and there's some very important people listening, maybe we could put together some kind of a program similar to the CMHC program that essentially the Canadian Mortgage and Housing is underwritten. They're actually insuring the risk for high ratio mortgages. Maybe something like that would work for smaller, medium entities. But Seal, you're right. It's really difficult. unfortunately, the light has turned into red in terms of if we don't find some methodology to support the SMEs that are coming. This has been going on forever, but particularly as they're coming out of the pandemic with when most of them are in horrible shape because of it. If we can't find a way to do that, I don't know if they're going to. We're probably going to lose a very large number of them. Will they be replaced with new SMEs? Good question. But SMEs are the ones that are employing people, and yeah.
Well, Joe,
Can I say something?
we might want to. Tom, you got a question?
Yeah, Joe, I'm a SME. I've been a SME for 20 years probably. And I have a company, I do software development, and I've developed about, over the years, 20 apps, and some of them are my own, and some of them have pretty good branding to them. And yet when I go and talk to a bank, or I talk to the Canadian Business Bank or whatever, they look at me and they say, oh yeah, your value is nothing. When you die, your business dies, you're your business. And yet over this time, I've developed apps that are still making $200 or $300 a month. When they first came out, I did one app called Back in Black when it first came out, and it's a personal finance app. When it came out, I was making $20,000 a month off of it. But, the business, the market has got very crowded now, and it's very hard to sell apps anymore.
Let's get to your question, because we've only
so
got a
I'm
minute
just
left.
wondering, you talk about valuation. This is what I've been working with for so long in not being able to get the loans I need and whatnot because of the regard of this old thinking that, you've created a really wonderful business. Where do you go from here? It's not being supported.
So you're asking Joe for a loan, are you?
Oh, there's an idea. No, I'll talk to the fellow from the Royal Bank.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, Joe. I don't think there's a question there. I think there's a point Tom, however, is making as a SME to reinforce the point you were making, that the estimates are between 40 and 60% of the small and medium-sized enterprises will die before this COVID is over. We're likely to revisit that. I'll talk about that at the end of the show, that I think we've got a program that we would be of considerable value around the future of SMEs, given what COVID is doing. So Joe, I think we'll be inviting you back, and maybe your colleague, Robert. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Okay, our next guest is Kelly O'Neill. Welcome, Kelly. Nice to see you. I like your new hairdo. Kelly, you're the Dean of Program Development at Humber College. I know you well. I've known you since you moved out to Ontario from Alberta. But Humber's got the largest program in all of Ontario. I wasn't aware of that. The impact of COVID must constitute an extraordinary challenge for you, the college, and the students. We don't envy you in the advanced education system as it's shaping up today, Kelly. But you've always seen the silver lining, embracing change. Help us. Where are the opportunities today?
Thank you, Perry, and thank you, everybody. I know I'm here a week before Christmas, the last on stage this evening, and it's 7 o'clock my time. I just want to share this with you. Is that in full screen for everybody?
It's fine. We can all. I think we can all see it. Anybody who can't? Looks like you're fine.
Okay. So let me just give you a moment, if I could, just to tell you how I am entering this conversation. As Perry said, in 2013, I was living in Alberta. I was at Athabasca University for 10 years and Northwest College before that. And in 2013, the Analytics Big Data in the Cloud conference took place. And Perry and I worked on that together. That's where I really started to get interested in tech just generally, and not tech as a technical person, but as a private citizen and as a member of the public service who works in organizations that are supposed to be quite advanced. For example, Athabasca University is Canada's online university, but the administration of the universities and colleges in Canada is still really dismal as far as technology adoption goes. So that's where my interests really began. And today what I want to do is just talk a little bit about a concept, the way Joe was talking about a concept, but I'm going to nest it into a product, this being Tribe ID, just for illustrative purposes. I'm not here selling anything, except for this idea that I would like to try and get some traction for. And so I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, which I will keep short, you'll have some feedback for me about how I can take this and to bigger markets, to any markets in Canada. Adoption elsewhere hasn't been a problem. In Canada, it has been problematic. So we're talking about academic credentials specifically because I'm in higher education. But again, this is just a use case. There are lots of other opportunities to adopt this technology. We were talking about finance. I've got a slide later on about finance, professional associations, the same thing. So hang on and you'll see applicability. I just want to give you one example all the way through because I'm not technical. I don't have the answers to the technical questions, but I really like the concept. So talking about self-sovereign digital identity. Kim Cameron was a chief privacy officer for Microsoft and happens to be an advisor of Convergence, which is who owns this technology that I'm talking about. And he identified 7 laws of identity, which come down to the text really on the left-hand side of your screen. Every site we go into, we're using a different login name and we're using a different password. We each are comprised now of probably 50 or 60 different identities. And one of the things with all these identities is we also give away more information than we need to. So if you need to confirm my age at a liquor store, that's one thing, but why should I have to give you my address? If you think about pulling apart the elements of identity, this is where I want to get to tonight around digital credentials. So in the higher education space, for example, we're looking at, I should get rid of this, sorry. Access, trust, and standards. So for example, when you get a credential, when you are looking for your kids for a continuing education or for anything, and you receive your credential at the end of it, you get a piece of paper that's mailed to you. And now you probably get a PDF document emailed to you, which is easily faked. It's very difficult to have student mobility and transferability of qualifications across different platforms and across different areas or domains of knowledge when you're stuck with one piece of paper from one institution. And what we've seen in the private sector, there are lots of things like badging and micro-credentials, really awarding people for very specific competencies, which, you know, you can see them on their LinkedIn profile and that kind of thing. So this is a way of taking what has been really embedded in a very bureaucratic system of issuing and owning the student's information and giving it back to the student. So I've spoken about student mobility, credential authenticity, and credential utility. I just like to explain where this all came to for me. So as Perry mentioned, my role is the Dean of Program Planning, Development, and Renewal at Humber. And Humber is the largest college polytechnic in Canada. We have 30,000 full-time students and over 25,000 part-time students. And our budget is about $460 million. So we're a big player, not just in Ontario, but nationally. And there is a national initiative right now going on to try and get every single higher education institution in the country, remembering that we are organized provincially, not nationally, and they're all going to share records with each other to support student mobility. They're going to digitize all of the transcript information they have. This is a big dream that these people have who can't even get online education right yet. So my money's not on that. My money's not on that project at all. And I'm hoping that there are some leaders here in higher education who will be a little bit braver and consider this blockchain technology, for issuing digital credentials. And I'll say it's not Bitcoin, it's on blockchain technology, it's on Ethereum. We can talk about that later. So there's three components to this piece. We've got the cloud API, the administrative portal, and the wallet. So you have somebody who's issuing the credential, you've got the verification of the credential, and you've got the person who owns the information. So again, while I'm talking about credentials here, we're also talking about your driver's license. Or if you're a CPA, Joe, how do you get your card? How do I know you're a CPA? What do you carry it in your wallet, or can you show it to me? In the era of COVID, this has become incredibly important. And I'd like to give you an example of that, if I may. Healthcare workers, such as healthcare aides or personal support workers, in order for them to go out into the workplace, they need a ton of certifications. They need a proper mask fitting, they need CPR, they need to have training in individual things, they need to have their immunizations up to date, up to 10 or 12 different qualifications that they need to have. And what happens across the country in every institution is the college or the university asks the student, go out and get these certifications, bring them back to me. And in my folder or in my database even, I will check off that yes, you've achieved them. And I will tell your employer that you've met our standards. Again, the person, the worker, the student, however you characterize that individual, they don't have authority over that except for some photocopied papers that they can carry around in a folder or a folio. In the age of COVID, where we have healthcare workers who are moving between institutions and it's becoming, more dangerous, then having an automated way to be able to verify using a QR code, for example, like they do with menus, you would be able to verify that this person has all of the requirements and let them in to the hospital or the long-term care home, for example. So again, we're talking about credentials in higher education, but we can be talking about credentials of all different stripes. I'm just going to leave this slide for now. It's what talks about the cryptography behind it. It's what talks about what keeps the privacy intact. Again, I trust that the people who built this know what they're doing based on their existing credentials and based on something that I'll show you at the end around the W3. I work in a higher education system where people can't tell me how email works, but they know for sure that they don't want to use online credentials until they understand what they are. So I feel like I'm in a bit of a pickle here because I can't understand it and I've been studying it for 10 years. The easy way to see it is it's detected immediately upon attempted verification. Again, another way that it can be issued is through a QR code. Okay, I'd like to show you this screen, and I know it's not clear, but when I was saying that there are many different applications for this kind of initiative, here we've got education, retail, finance, healthcare, professional credentials. There's legal stuff, there are devices, and this screen represents the W3 organization, which is essentially the community of committees that run the internet. And they're the ones that establish what the protocols are so that when organizations are building things on these protocols, there is interoperability. So I'm not trying to promote a product that is a standalone product. It's built with specs so that it can be interoperable with others who are developing similar products, but may have different features and benefits that would be of interest, for example, to healthcare, where they may not be of interest as much to retail. I just wanted to point out finance and healthcare in particular, just because I know who our audience is and who it tends to be with Perry. These are all different applications where, again, our own personal information is really important, can be our own, can can be owned by us instead of the intermediary. This organization that I'm working with, and again, I'm not working with them as in getting paid by them. What happened is, in my role at Humber, it's my job to plan new programs. So when you open up a catalog and you see, okay, there's a Bachelor of Engineering degree at the U of T, or the U of A's got a Faculty of Native Studies and they've got a new program there. That program was probably developed, it probably took 5 years to develop that program. And there's a whole bureaucracy that goes on inside the institution, as well as with government, in order to make that thing come to life. So it's my job, and I'm pretty good at my job. It's my job to see around corners. And this was a corner that I saw around when I had an opportunity to meet with people in the blockchain, trying to get some momentum going in the blockchain community around self-sovereign identity. They're already experiencing lots of success with different projects, as you can see on my screen, everything from Kashmir in Afghanistan through to health records, which they are working with a senior residents right now around the COVID vaccine. And clients that they have existing, one element of the Ontario government, the City of Toronto, a couple of private K-12 organizations. But what you don't see are big post-secondaries. What you don't see are public service agencies to a great extent within Canada. And we just can't seem to get any traction on this. With COVID, with the need to be able to show that you've been vaccinated to get on a plane or to get into a sports arena or to go see a concert, we're going to need to start to get accustomed to become used to exchanging information digitally. Digital credentials are an amazing opportunity to do that. And I would really look to you all for some advice, perhaps some opportunities that I could explore that might tell me a little bit about how you think I could get some traction for this idea, not just here in Ontario, but across the country. So thanks very much.
Superb, Kelly. That you certainly haven't disappointed me with that overview. You and I have been watching supply chain management for many years now, since the Analytics, Big Data in the Cloud event. Logistics, which is the capacity to actually move goods, is shrinking dramatically and becoming digitized quickly. I mean, it's astounding to see what Amazon does today with the logistics that they have. But, you know, your point is personalization. The capacity for the large institution to actually convert its operations so that it can truly embrace every individual quickly. My wife was the registrar of the College of Psychologists. The problem of credentialing of people coming from offshore into Canada and facing the institutional complexities of getting admitted, whether it be to a profession or to a university, or someone who's been vaccinated being able to be free again to work and walk within their communities. I mean, these are all huge issues. So I'm going to ask the audience or the group, anybody have any questions they want to ask? Go ahead, Jackie, unmute yourself. There you go.
Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate your frustration as you compare people that don't know how to use their email, let alone try to implement a system. My question, and I don't know very much about what you're talking about, but the thing that came to me as you were giving your one example about the healthcare worker is, why not go to the people themselves? So whether they're still a student or they're a worker now, or they're the person that wants to get on the plane and show that they have the vaccination, why not go to the people first and get a critical mass of people that are using it and talking about it and making it easy for their individual lives or their individual small circle where they're showing their credentials. And then the second one would be all those professional associations, like go to the association for the nursing or the healthcare or the others and see if that association would sponsor something through their network. Again, trying to get at the individuals, and then wait for the large institutions later. And then I wonder, And I don't know how to do it either, but speaking of needing the vaccinations to go travel, I don't know which agency would that be, but it's the individuals that want it, right? It's the individuals that need to show and use it. So that was my first impression. And then the second question I have for you is, because it's important for you to have your students' credentials, and I guess it's the fake stuff, how often do the students get asked for their college degree certificates, or is it more of those regulatory type of things? Like, under what circumstances would a student need to show that they got all those things checked off?
Those are great comments and questions. Thank you. And we are trying to make some noise at the student level by tapping into students' associations and registrars of regulated bodies. I think the tricky part is to get these things into circulation, you need an issuer and a verifier. So we need a consortium right off the bat. You need two partners right off the bat, such as Spectrum here in Toronto, and the issuers, the health authority that's issuing the vaccine. I think that if you want to attend graduate school, you have to show transcripts. If you want to, many employers require that you photocopy or send in a copy of your parchment, right? Really, student mobility is huge. International students, save for COVID, but we're getting back, to figuring out the rules around that. International student mobility is huge. And at the current time, most places require physical copies of everything in order to be able to do that. For example, I know somebody whose son had to fly to Australia to get his credentials that he earned in Australia to bring them back to Canada. And that is not a one-off. These are the ridiculous things that we expect out of people in our system. So I really appreciate the questions and the input for sure. Thank you.
It's always good to find someone who's got a supply chain already established. The RFID market is fairly mature. Have you looked at those that actually sell or market RFID today?
No, I haven't, Perry. Thank you.
Sharon, you have a question?
Yeah, Kelly, the word passport is going to be becoming, I think, very popular along the lines of the health stream. So that passport, people will understand that word. And they are setting the pace, I think, for creating that passport. So the international student mobility is a big deal here. Are you aware of how other countries or where other countries are in their development of a passport, just for the sake of brevity here, where they are at in the development of their respective passports?
Well, Singapore government, not for health, but for education, has adopted it wholesale. They can because of how they administer their government.
Well, with a single healthcare system in Alberta, I mean, Alberta would be prime for the application of this technology or this application in the health sector. And everybody's looking for an advantage right now to come out of COVID as if they were smart. Let's have a conversation about how we might get your ideas and your application in front of the Alberta Health Service.
But I just want to, Kelly, is it actually done? Is complete to roll out, or?
Oh yeah, it's rolling out in Afghanistan. Kashmir farmers, many international projects. It's in Canada. We are, we're so conservative in our adoption. This is why the SMEs have problems. This is, we're so conservative.
I think what Hubert Lau is doing with China and with McDonald's and the meat industry is very similar. Credentialing is a different word, but he has the capacity from the grazing to the kitchen table to be able to monitor the various stages that product evolves. Same with coffee in Africa, is from the bush to the beverage. They can track beans everywhere. And it has considerable relevance to the banks who actually pay now as that good moves along the supply channel, instead of waiting till it's at the end. And it's also eliminated corruption. Tom, did you have a question there?
Yeah, we pushed a similar concept to the unions about 3-4 years ago. And the idea being that, when you hire somebody, they have to have certain certification for welding certificates and everything like that. And we thought we were on to a win with these people, and there was a lot of enthusiasm, but they went back to their old system and we just had to shut it down. But it was very frustrating. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's always frustrating to be at the leading edge or the bleeding edge, to be
Yeah.
first and to
Per-
find
Per-
all
I
of
have
what it takes.
I have a question when you get a chance, Perry.
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Kelly. I share your pain. Okay. I was vice president of NATE in Edmonton for some time, years ago, and I share your pain. After I left there and went on, I was going to write a book, and I was going to call it "Dancing with Dinosaurs." Okay. There's two. Unfortunately, you're dealing with some systemic issues. One of the problems, unfortunately, I guess I should I can't turn my light on because I have to walk over there and I got headphones. Sorry about that. But one of the systemic problems we have in our country is, even though I still love the fact that we've got a constitution and the BNA Act gave permission or gave responsibility for a variety of things to provinces and others to the feds. One of the when they decided to give educational responsibilities to the province, you basically you're fighting against to try to make any normalcy out of these things. You're fighting against the fact that for the 150 years we've the provinces have basically been on their own. And one of the things I think you'd agree is that each province, and maybe even each institution, tries to reinvent the wheel. They don't learn anything from anywhere else. When I was at NATE, one of the things that we observed is that we were one of the primary trainers of apprentices in the country. Okay, and I kept on saying, what we should look at what the apprenticeship system in Europe. And I was a VP of finance, so that they didn't hold me in high regard for anything to do with academics. But the academic VP would look at me and say, "What the hell? What can we learn from those guys?" Well, they've had apprenticeship systems in Europe for like 800 or 900 years, and it works well. So I share your pain, and I wish that there's. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a question. It's just mostly a comment. So good luck with it. Yeah, I wish I could help.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I don't know.
I have one more. Forgive me if I'm covering old ground or area that you're already done, Kelly, but I truly believe that this is a campaign for social media marketing. So when it comes time for change, governments, particularly in Canada, because we are conservative in nature and built that way, they respond to the groundswell from the ground up. And to convince people at the top end of that podium, they got to hear that there's a groundswell at the bottom in Canada for sure. So I don't know how far you are within your social media engagement, but I think this is the LinkedIn campaign that is perfect to engage, because LinkedIn has got a Institute of Higher Learning division that goes across the sort of the horizon. Again, this linked HR organization that I'm aligned with, they're talking to HR people internationally, and certainly there's a good component of Canadians within that segment of 1.25 million HR people. But it is a campaign. It is a groundswell campaign to me, because that's how I'm built, right? A marketing of a good message that's already in existence. And so then I would then swing over to where Joe is sitting over there, Joe, and that is your intangible asset, which is so effective and so strong, which is going to be counted as well, the growth of that digital asset. So anyway, you probably have done all of that.
No, they are working. They have worked on some marketing, social marketing there on LinkedIn, but obviously there needs to be some kind of a definitive plan, and I appreciate your feedback. Also, Tom, thank you for your comments. It's good to know that others have tried this, because I think the unions are a perfect example. They've got their cards, right? It's perfect.
I got a question.
Sure, go ahead, Scooter.
Yeah, Scooter. So I'm one of these Luddites. So that's my password, and it got mixed up with my my name. And Perry, you may recognize me. I just took my mustache off, but this is John McLaughlin.
Okay, hi, John.
Yeah, we go back a few years. Anyways, my question to Kelly is, how does emerging ID technology, such as can be found in the security industry, fingerprints, eye scans, and so on, relate to your work?
To my work, it doesn't. I'm sure that those who are technologically inclined could draw the lines for you, but for me, I have no idea. Thank you for the question.
But you go ahead, John, because sometimes when one asks a question, they want to make a point. But
Okay,
answer your own question.
maybe I didn't ask the question right.
No, you did fine.
Okay, so so I just want to relate. A few years ago, I had a good friend. He tried to get some new technology involved where you would have just carry one card instead of having 17 cards in your wallet. You would consolidate it down to one. You know, this was 20 years ago, before we got into the digital economy. Security people are going this way of doing fingerprints or eye scans, and that's your individual identity. It's associated with you. You are the only one with that eye. So why wouldn't you be looking at that? We don't even, that's the digital, so that could be the digital solution.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, that was my misunderstanding. The biometrics piece is related to the individual, absolutely. Again, when we're talking about credentials of some sort, we're talking about somebody who has to issue it. So yes, it's me, but somebody has to validate whatever about me that they're validating. So there's an issuer, there's an owner of the data, and then there's the person or the organization that validates or verifies the data. So instead of a QR code, perhaps you could use biometrics or something like that. But it's the three people, and it's making the human who owns the information the owner of their own data. So instead of one card in your physical wallet, you might have multiple cards in your digital wallet, and you could issue pieces of information as needed to those who want to verify it is you.
This is fascinating from the perspective as I share with you my takeaway, and we bring this session to a wrap up. We've once again arrived at the principle of personalization. I am, or you are who you are, and you are many things to many people. You're one to yourself, but the world out there is so fragmented, and through entropy, so many dimensions of the way the world looks at you, that every institution looks at you through its own lens. And what Kelly's been talking about, what Joe's been talking about, and to some extent what Sharon's been talking about, is how the world is changing to try and do a better job at getting to you and being able to make that dialogue interactive. So we heard from Randy last week about biometrics. Well, he can now capture an individual's biometrics, but who cares and who's willing to pay? Who cares that we can do credentialing? Well, the institution should, we know that, and yet the market hasn't yet evolved to enable that to happen. So technology often gets ahead of itself. And it's people like Sharon that can help make that market wake up. And as I learned when I was with KPMG, being in the business of creating markets is not an easy business. Most people have product and they wish the hell the market was there for their product, but it's people like Sharon and stuff like what we're doing here as a group today, which is really recognizing that the shaping of markets in sync with this digital economy that is already here is the challenge. That's what John has started. Every one of you that I'm talking to today, everyone who's part of it, is about change management, is expressing some element of frustration or excited about an opportunity or the threat. And none of us really in this room are we're frustrated. We're not threatened. The threat is those that are in industry today and in institutions today that are not ready. And they're going to be late to the game. And I'm afraid it's too often that at the graveyard, change occurs. It's way too late. Kodak saw it the stock market shows it all the time, is to be frustrated isn't enough. Well, to be threatened isn't enough. You got to be frustrated and act on it. And I guess we're all here to help. As for next week, and I won't say next week because next week's Christmas. And I don't think any of us or others are going to respond to want to be doing this, at least drinking without family. So I'm going to say for next time after Christmas, probably the week following. Well, the week following is January 1st. That's the new year. And I don't know whether any one of you'll all be hungover on New Year's. So I don't think it likely that we'll have an event on New Year's. So we may have a 2-week break, but we'll continue the discussion on the digital economy and its implications. And if you have something to share on this subject or know of someone who would like to share and play with us, let us know. The economy and COVID, it continues to echo. And I am talking to some individuals today that have got some videos that I assembled back in the spring. Maybe we do a show on the economy post-COVID. But is democracy at risk? Well, as long as Trudeau's, I won't go there. Is the future one of bright opportunity or dark threat? What are the implications for your company, for your profession, for your government? In a fully networked world, does privacy matter? I care about privacy. Do you? Well, stay tuned, and if need be, contact me. You know how you above all know how to get hold of me. So I'm not really talking to strangers, even though John McLaughlin has taken a long while for you to come back again. And I hope you stay tuned. So I'll send you all a reminder and agenda for the next time, which is probably into the second week of January. Same URL. Claire's taking care of that, so we're not going to change the URL. And same time. Until then, good night, be safe, and mask up. So you don't need to disappear. We'll keep the conversation going. Well, it is 5:30. It's time to say goodnight. Sharon's applauding. Unmute. If you're gonna applaud, everybody unmute. Yeah. Okay, any parting comments? Because it is 5:30. If you want to stick around, I'll stay.
I just want, Kelly, I applaud your passion with what you're doing. Yeah, it's an uphill battle, but keep working hard because you're right on scheme there. Absolutely. Somebody changed my career, and she was a secretary, they called them in those days, and they said to me, Perry, you don't belong in government. Kelly, you don't belong in advanced education. Yeah.
I know you're looking over the fence. Well, keep on looking, because the day will come where you'll leap as I did, and it'll be the most exciting days of your life. So, Michelle, any parting comments or observations?
No, I just know that you're going to send me a bunch of work next week. So, and that's okay.
I thought I was sending you a bunch of fun.
You know what? If that's how you want to call it, sure.
It's not hard to post this stuff, is it? You got the recording, right, Claire?
Perry?
You got the recording. You unmute.
Perry?
Yes, I do.
So, and it gets compressed, and then he puts it up in Dropbox, and I move it,
And then off
get a
we go.
URL from YouTube, and we post it.
Yeah,
No, it was a really good session today. So thank you guys. It was really good.
It was very good.
Jackie, thanks for joining us. You asked some very good questions. Bud, your strength is in your silence. Ling, I'm glad you visited us from the beach. It's always nice to see the contrast between what Claire has as his background, which is a polar bear in Canada, and you're embarrassing us by sitting on a beach I just want to hear the Honolulu music in the background.
Yeah, the waves lapping on the shore.
That's it. That's exactly what's
here.
I'm disappointed
just a
no one
final-
else had a Christmas tree.
Yeah, you got a tree there. Presents for all of us, right?
No.
Tom, you got a comment?
Only for you, Perry.
Yeah, I'd just like to say any of these softwares that are, like what our guest was talking about there, the whole thing is security. A really good example, I think, is this tracking software that the provincial government came out with, as opposed to the federal government. The federal government were much more clever about what they rolled out, because they made sure that the security issue was really, really taken care of and nailed down. Whereas our local government, they went and put up this software through, I don't know, whatever system they get people to quote on. And it just, what, they had 19, 20 people use the software or something like that. And that's the stuff that you sort of come up against when you're trying to do these big developments.
Yeah.
Software, it really is security these days.
Hi, Bud, you got a comment?
I have a question, actually. Some of you know that I spent part of my time with some mentoring and things like that. And I had a term put to me today regarding searching for an individual, and it was a data architect or data architecture. And I have no idea what that means. But I was asked if I had any connections to people that knew data architects or architecture that might be interested in a venture. So there's my question. I hope it's not as simple as the sky is blue.
Yeah.
And if so, you guys
What are they doing with this data and why do they need an architect?
I don't know, Michelle. That's what I've been told by the people that are.
It's a bit of a broad range when you say a data architect. Is that a database programmer? Is it someone that is collecting data? Like,
I can't answer those questions.
if you have this is for a job?
Yes. Yeah.
So can you send me the job description? Because I'm in that arena. So
it's much more complex than that. I'd be more than happy to talk to you offline. Yeah. This is a young guy I've been working with for over 3 years now, and has managed to hang on through some very difficult times, and is a very complex individual. So he has just enough technical ability that he understands what a data architect is, and he just asks the questions. So if there are a series of very simple questions that I can ask that will help, then I'll certainly do that. But like it's a very unique circumstance, very unique individual.
Yeah, saying a data architect is like saying, oh, you're a building architect. Okay, yeah. Well, what kind of building? What are you? Are you building Taj Mahal or are you building a tent?
Okay, so Michelle, you and Bud can take that offline, and I'm sure get it resolved.
In the software development business, which I've been in for 12 years, an interface architect was somebody who figured out, okay, where do you push a button here? Where do you do that? So it seems like a data architect would be just manipulating.
It's typically how you structure your data. That's usually what it's all about.
Yeah.
You've got a mess, and they want to organize it in such a way they can digitize it. Ling probably is deep into data architecture as well. So
yeah.
After a glass of wine, architecture is a bit of a heavy word, so let's make it simple.
Yeah, okay.
Sharon, any parting comments, observations?
Well, I love this. I think this was really valuable for Friday afternoon, both informative, educational, stimulating, and in addition to being comfortable online, the exchange of information really important. So congratulations, Perry, for bringing in people who have something to say, and I don't think that's going to be a shortage for going forward.
No, thank you. Thanks for your feedback. Joe, any parting comments?
Yeah, just Perry, you mentioned this, and we are in a period of massive disruption, and frankly, if we, I don't know who the we is, if we don't find a way to have our either ourselves or our major institutions change, we're going to suffer some serious consequences. And so Sharon talked about Kelly was sort of talking about this from the top down, and Sharon responded, that's okay, but what about if you went from the bottom up? In other words, creating a groundswell and move up. Today people have way more influence than before, because you can attract audiences for causes and spread them over social media in seconds versus used to take forever. So just think of it, if we are in this age of disruption, and we really need change. Do we do it do we do it through groundswell, which is bottom up, or do you do it from top down? That's
So
just a thought process.
I'm going to interrupt and pick up on the point that you're making, because I think you're absolutely right. Here's evidence right here that there's more information flowing than ever before. It's creating chaos. And in that chaos, you've got people that are throwing out facts and people that are throwing out fiction, and creating even more chaos. So for someone to make the breakthrough, we've got to figure out where can we place the trust again? Because the trust is dying. You don't trust, you're not sure your doctor, because one doctor says X and he gets publicized, and someone says Y and he gets publicized. And so the patient sits out in this world of chaos trying to figure out where do I go? So he either tunes off the world or listens to as much as he can, because he does the word trust or credentialing, coming back to point the word Kelly was using. We don't know as a society who to trust anymore. The institutions are flat. The professions are not trusted. This is core to what has become the digital economy. We have so much information. We don't know how to sort it out anymore. And we don't know who to trust. And I think it's causing frustrations on things like masking and distancing. And you see it daily around COVID, just one example. But COVID is just one example of many out there.
Well, it's brought a very sharp, COVID has brought a very sharp focus, but this has been around for a very long time. You're right.
And so it's exaggerated it. I think, Sharon, you made the point earlier that COVID has simply amplified all of the issues that have been lingering. That series of episodes that we did around the survey. And I will be meeting, by the way, with the CEO of Alberta Innovates on exactly this topic. They have looked at what we generated with our survey, and they're watching a little bit what we're doing. And I'm telling them, until we can figure out how to reestablish trust, that there is a vehicle that people can talk to and go to and feel confident that it is in fact fact-based, we've got a problem. Kelly, any concluding observations or comments? No, she hasn't fallen asleep yet. She's not heading in the right direction. Michelle, any parting comments, Michelle?
No, I'm good, Perry.
Shirley, you've been quiet today.
Actually, I do. Sorry, Perry. I do want to say Merry Christmas to everyone.
That's very nice.
Thank you.
That's my last parting shot.
Well, you're the centerfold on my screen right now. Tom, you have any parting comment?
Well, I just think, as we talked about last week, that this is a badly needed groundbreaking forum that we've got going on here, and I think it's quite wonderful. It's your doing, man.
Well,
I got a new camera and new sound system, but that's beside the point.
Well, we got to figure out if it has value, then presumably a market will respond to it. But it's the classical problem is we've got product and the product's evolving. Thank you, Sharon. I've listened carefully to many of the messages that you threw at us today, because I think we are a subject that is in need of making this better and better and better and making it more attractive to market. But therein lies the challenge of how to get market. But any parting comments?
No, very interesting. Very good. Right on the money, chaos.
Ling, any parting comments?
Ling's, oh yeah, he's still
there. Ling, I think you're muted. We're not hearing you. No, I think you're too far away. There's a lot of lag between Hawaii and Alberta.
He hasn't got his mic in.
I know. I don't think you're plugged in, because it doesn't say unmute on your screen. Oh, there you are. No.
Hello.
Okay, sign language. Thumbs up if you're wishing us a Merry Christmas. Okay. Claire, any parting comments?
No, it was good. I was trying to put up the closing screen there, but it wasn't working. So Michelle, I think you're going to have to tack that on again.
Okay, well, it did work. It was up there for a little while.
It wasn't working from this end. Maybe it did show for a little while.
Yeah.
Probably just disrupted things more than anything. No, it was very good. Everybody had some good stuff to say.
I think I need to bring some powder along and powder my nose a bit.
Well,
that's a good idea.
Joe, it was good to get you out of the dark. Shirley, we got a lot of reflection on your glasses there.
That's probably why I couldn't get the screen up, Thomas, because I was getting too much reflection off your nose.
For me? Was that for me?
Oh, that's for me.
Well, I'm going to say have a great Christmas. Have a nice New Year. It's always fun to meet the gang. So you take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Guys.
Bye, everybody.